Matt, you don't get any fine champagne in Omaha?
I don't. We call that soda pop around here.
We call it soda pop. That's pretty good. Hey, Matt. Hey, Angela.
Hey,
Thanks for joining me today. Appreciate it. How
Hey
are you
guys.
guys?
good.
Good.
Awesome. All right, we're here today to talk about process optimization. And we've come to an interesting crossroads when it comes to process optimization and automation because a lot of our clients are beginning to understand how backwards some of their processes are, and they're beginning to vet what technologies can help provide some real value to automate these. And that's great, right? And we're here to help them. However, you may have heard this little thing called artificial intelligence. And a lot of people get some ideas, and this ramps up excitement and causes sometimes some unrealistic expectations, not only for what an optimized process might look like, but then create this thought that, hey, maybe we don't have to have this human element needed in our processes in the first place, right? So it's almost kind of ramping up faster than where we're really kind of suggesting our customers go. So we're going to look at this a little bit closer today and talk about how to understand when a process is primed for optimization, right? Do your processes have human intelligence that need to be incorporated? Spoiler alert, yes, they probably should. But also, what are some good automation candidates and what technology can help us with this automation? So, just starting from the top, Angela, we'll start with you. What are you seeing that can create barriers for automation in the workplace today?
Yeah, it's interesting how much time we do spend with customers trying to understand their processes and figure out what is prime for automation and what is not, what belongs in people's heads and should belong in people's heads, and keeping the smart people doing smart things. So the barriers that I see is really those cerebral tasks. If something takes a lot of thinking and tribal knowledge and previous experience to put into a task that may not necessarily be predictable, that's a big barrier. As well as having good data. You want the data in a central location that's accessible and consumable so that we can do all sorts of fun stuff with it, like Matt does.
That's true. Matt does a lot of fun stuff. Matt, what are your thoughts? What can create some barriers?
Yeah, what really creates barriers, Angela really hit it on the head, is that even with the advances into large language models and machine learning and all that fun stuff with AI, it doesn't take away the reasoning element from a lot of your processes. If you need somebody to think and say, it must be this because of my experience, or it must be that because of how things work in the real world, that makes a bad candidate for automation, because that is stuff that you really need to have somebody in the loop. Now, you can automate what comes before and what comes after, but really it's that piece. And even with the advent of artificial intelligence really doesn't do reasoning. Even reasoning models don't do real human reasoning really well.
For sure. And you brought up something though about candidacy, right? What makes a good candidate and a bad candidate. So let's hit on that a little bit closer. Angela, when we're talking about how to decide what makes a good candidate and a bad candidate, because we talk a lot of customers who are trying to understand, where do I start? Kind of on the not so great side, right? What's something that you've encountered where you say, you know what, this might not be where we want to start to move forward towards process automation, just because there are maybe skeletons in the closet or some things that we don't think that we might be worth undertaking at the moment.
Yeah, aside from that human element, the smart actions, really what we've found is trying to replicate some, menial tasks, things like resorting an Excel sheet, filtering an Excel sheet, trying to replicate those button clicks, or even replicating navigation through a website, which we know is going to change over time. It's not going to stay static. So trying to spend the time and the resources and the effort to replicate those pretty small tasks when we could really find other ways around that, getting the information out of Excel in the first place, or using an API to get information out of a website instead of looking at the manual human actions.
Yeah, for sure. That's the challenge, right? And sometimes Matt, if we want to be a little blue, crap in, crap out, I believe is the phrase, right? Sometimes we just don't want to deal with something that isn't worth dealing with.
It's really looking at your process to make sure that it is a good process, and there isn't little improvements or big improvements that can be made in that process again. I very tongue-in-cheek say, if you have a crappy process and you automate a crappy process, it's still a crappy process. So we don't necessarily want that. We want to look at our process to make sure it is a good process, it is an efficient process, and then look at our automation elements to improve upon that and make it more efficient.
So, okay, flip side, Angela, what would be a great opportunity to start looking at process optimization? What are some good candidates?
Great candidates are situations where either we have the data or we can get it, put it in a central location, like we mentioned. And then if we can replicate some predictable if-then statements, we know that if we look up these factors, the result is going to be X or it's going to be Y. If we can kind of script out very replicated actions, things that happen every day, multiple times a day, and we can predict what the outcome is going to be with some certainty, those are great candidates. For example, we worked with a customer that we needed to be able to look up where shipping was going to come from a distribution facility, from one or the other, based on the type of vintage of a wine that was being distributed. So we could say with certainty that a cab is going to come from one location, and bubbles, which I had to educate Matt on, is going to come from a different location. So with certainty, we knew that a shipment order for certain types of wines would come from one location or another.
Yeah.
It's a repeatable, predictable process that we were able to automate for this customer.
Matt, you don't get any fine champagne in Omaha?
I don't. We call that soda pop
Gotta come to
around
Houston for
here.
that.
We call it soda pop. That's pretty good. No, that's a great example, though. So, okay, we understand, okay, this is going to work because our data is where we need it, and we can actually see some improvement when we start to put some muscle behind it, but also when we start to add some technology into the mix. So, Matt, we've found our good candidates here. What are some advancements now in technology that our customers are taking advantage of that can really help accelerate some of that automation?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things that we use and that we talk with our clients and customers about. One is Microsoft's Process Advisor, which is a way that you can, first of all, record what you are doing. So we can see what the entire process is from beginning to end. And then what that takes advantage of some Copilot elements that scaffolds out some potential automations from there. Now, what you can also do with that same product is take a look at the greater data aspects. So what is going on in that process behind the scenes? Are people following it correctly? Over time, what does it look like? Where are our barriers? Where are our issues? Where do we move quickly? Where do we slow down? And then we look at, okay, well, can we automate those specific issues? Now, in the example that Angela gave, that same client, what they found their major barrier was they had to have somebody look at a PDF file and then bang in the form what's going on. So we found that what you could do with that is take all those elements that we were looking up and finding and put it into a CVS file and then ingest it directly into their system and let the system just take over. That was so much more efficient than replicating those button clicks and replicating the form process. We have now a file that comes out, it gets ingested, and now we can add on more of their clients, more of their customers, because we have this generic file that's outputted each time. So there's a case of us looking at their process, and it was a good process. It didn't have too much problem. There was no crappiness involved in that, but you had that human element that could be eliminated and digitized another way.
Well, to bring it full circle, too, back to the human element thing, right? We're still having, and in that scenario, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, we're still having those people be put into more important and actual, meaningful ways back into the organization, right? I think the feedback was to us at the end of that project, I don't have to do these meaningless things anymore that are just a drain on me, and I can get back to providing more to the organization.
Yeah, super fun client. They didn't care about ROI. They cared about ROI, but they didn't care about ROI. What they cared about was they had their friends and their people who were banging away at the keyboard all day long and were hating life. They wanted to improve life for those people, and that's what this did. And it not only improved their bottom line, but it also made those people happier in their job. They're doing much more important things, the stuff that they were hired to do.
Great. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate it, and appreciate the insights as always.